I feel honored to be up here on this platform this afternoon talking to you about entrepreneurship education. I hope I'll leave you with something today that will get you to think a little bit differently about the way forward in this field of entrepreneurship education. So here, I'm going to start sort of in the middle of my journey, but I've always been an entrepreneur. I took my last paycheck in 1982. I strapped a borrowed ladder on the roof of my car, started knocking on doors offering to clean people's gutters. Terrible student, barely got through high school. So I had to figure out how to kind of survive on my own. And I turned my gutter cleaning business into a $5 million company. And along the way, what I realized is that entrepreneurship is a way to empower people. Because about 4 or 5 years into it, I realized I was making as much money as my friends that had graduated from law school. And I don't think of myself as brilliant or particularly talented, but that I had just developed this ability to look at the world in a different way. And in 2007, when I started this company, the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative, our first client was the Cisco Entrepreneur Institute, and they hired us to create a course that gave us the platform to interview hundreds of entrepreneurs all over the United States. And it also gave us an opportunity to work with the Kauffman Foundation and the Cisco folks to do a deep dive on the ecosystem. What's happening in the entrepreneurship education space? What's working? What are entrepreneurs really doing? And I want to talk about this briefly. We basically identified two big problems. You know, that book that Carl Schramm wrote, The Entrepreneurial Imperative, basically became the template for our plan going forward, our vision going forward. This is an entrepreneurial imperative. And I'm fond of saying that you don't need to start a business to benefit from entrepreneurship education. But one of the big problems is scalability. How do we scale this thing? This is an imperative. How do we scale entrepreneurship? This is not a subject that lends itself to a textbook. And one of the big choke points out there is the courses that we offer are limited or constrained by the depth and breadth of the instructor's knowledge and experience. Recently, I was at a 4-day symposium in Oklahoma, Best Practices in Entrepreneurship Education. And I was startled to see the number of people that said, "Hi, my name's Sue. I'm the administrator from XYZ College, and I'm here to learn how to teach entrepreneurship education." "Hi, I'm Bill. I'm from the marketing department now. They told me I got to learn how to teach entrepreneurship." There's more to entrepreneurship than a business plan and a balance sheet and cash flow projections. It's just a difficult concept to convey in a textbook, specifically with a teacher that doesn't understand it. So that's my slide to convey the idea that it's difficult to convey in a textbook. So the first problem sort of leads to the second problem. And this is endemic in the entrepreneurship education ecosystem, is this one-size-fits-all approach to entrepreneurship. Well, what do I mean by that? I mean there's this approach to entrepreneurship. Because the teacher doesn't understand entrepreneurship, they default to the mechanics. Let's get them to write a business plan. Let's get them to do cash flow projections. Let's talk about the mechanical aspects, which are important. It's just not the place to start. But this is all predicated, or is so often predicated, on false assumptions. The ecosystem, the whole conversation about entrepreneurship has been hijacked by, as Tom says, the big money paradigm. The Silicon Valley whiz kids that's got $5 million driving around a Porsche and a t-shirt and jeans. So much of what's being taught is predicated on these assumptions. New technology, institutional funding, careful planning, in-depth market research, top-notch team, proven human capital. The problem is that's less than 2% Less than 2% of any new venture gets any kind of institutional angel venture financing. Here's the reality. If any of you are familiar with Amir Baide's work, while he was at Columbia, he published a study called Origins and Evolutions of New Businesses in 2000. This is the profile of the average Inc. 500 startup. Now, I want to say that again. I'm not talking about Sally's Hair Salon or Joe's Lawn Mowing Service. I'm talking about, this is the profile of an Inc. 500 startup. No new technology, $10,000, friends, fools, family, credit cards, second mortgages, caffeine. Little or no formal planning, opportunistic adaptation rather than in-depth research. Unproven human capital. I gave a presentation last night at the Kauffman Foundation with my co-author Clifton Talbert, who was one of the founders of the Stairmaster exercise equipment. And he came to Stairmaster when the inventors were on death's door. They were done. And Clifton saw the Stairmaster and said, I think I can sell this for these guys. I said, Clifton, how much market research did you do? He said, not a bit. I just saw something there and I went for it. It's a household name. Again, Inc. 500 startup. So what I'm saying is that 98% of new ventures are entrepreneurs with very limited resources. That's the little green nub there. Pursuing highly uncertain niche opportunities that are barely, if at all, visible at the onset. Bottom line, they're starting businesses that are not fundable. So, to address these two problems, the scalability issue and the one-size-fits-all issue, here's what we came up with. I'm going to kind of talk about this through the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program. Here's how it started. We wanted to create a program to emphasize the mindset of entrepreneurs. We look at the whole puzzle as if there's mindset and there's mechanics. If you only have the mechanics, you're liable to run into trouble. Some would say that's called an MBA. But if you have the mindset, you'll figure out the mechanics. So when we were doing the Cisco Entrepreneur Institute interviews, we ran into a guy named Clifton Talbert, who I just said is now my co-author and partner in this. And when I asked Clifton, I had no idea who he was. Somebody said that he was part of the Stairmaster. I had no idea he was a Pulitzer nominee. Time magazine named him Entrepreneur of the Year. I said, Clifton, how did you learn how to become an entrepreneur? Who taught you this? And he said to me, you know, long before this word entrepreneurship became popular, the concept still existed. And he started to tell me about how he grew up in the Mississippi Delta, was born to a teenage mother, had no father, was being passed around to his relatives, and he was working in the cotton field like everybody else. And he said that was just an accepted way of life that had been handed down. And he showed me a picture of the cotton field that his parents, his great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents had worked in. He just said that's the way it was. Mr. Walter's field truck came at 6 o'clock. You got on Mr. Walter's field truck. You went out in the field, and no thought was required of you. You picked cotton, and you got your check at the end of the day. So we decided to use this story. Clifton said, when I was 13 years old, my uncle brought me to work at the Ice House. My uncle happened to own the local ice house in Glen Allen, Mississippi. And for the first time, I saw a man that looked like me own a business. And he made me walk to work. He drove right past my house in the morning, but he gave me a ride home every day. And he tutored me, and he taught me to look at the world through the eyes of an entrepreneur. And that's how I learned how to become a Pulitzer nominee and co-founder of Stairmaster and Time Magazine Entrepreneur and lectured to the Supreme Court. What do I mean when I say a mindset? It's the underlying beliefs and assumptions that drive the behavior. There is no formulaic approach to teaching entrepreneurship. There's no proven formula. This is not algebra. When I heard Clifton describe the things that his uncle told me, I realized I had just finished interviewing several hundred entrepreneurs. And the same thing Uncle Cleve was teaching Clifton in 1958 at the Ice House in Glen Allen, Mississippi, was the same doggone thing Craig Newmark that started Craigslist was telling me 3 weeks earlier. It's the same fundamental logic. It's not complicated. It's simple fundamental logic. It's just different from the way we've been taught to think. And that's why we decided to use this story as the premise for the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program. Here's a man in the height of legal segregation who has no advantage over anyone else in his family, in his community. Not intellectual, not academic, not financial. He had a 4th grade education. So we decided to develop a curriculum, number one, to focus on the mindset of entrepreneurs. What are the underlying beliefs and assumptions that drive their behavior? What is that common logic? The second thing is develop a curriculum that matches the reality. In other words, let's develop a curriculum for the 98%. Because the mindset and the skill set that you need when you have very limited resources and you're pursuing a highly uncertain opportunity is different from the mindset and the skill set you need when you have venture capital and you're going after a high growth deal. It's just a whole different approach. It's opportunistic adaptation versus careful planning and in-depth research. So the third thing we decided to do to solve this problem was to use technology to capture the knowledge and experience of successful entrepreneurs. There's this concept of tacit knowledge. If I asked anyone in the room here tell me how to enunciate the letter R, you all know how to do it, but you'd be hard-pressed to tell me how to do it. Entrepreneurs, what they learn informally. And they can't always tell you how they did it. But it turns out the best way to transfer that knowledge is through face-to-face interview. So we're simply using technology to reinforce the learning, to reinforce the key concepts that are in the curriculum. I'm going to just highlight a few of the entrepreneurs that are included in the Ice House program that represent. So we wrote this book, right? This is a historic story. Who owns the Ice House? 8 life lessons from an unlikely entrepreneur. Now we created a course so that students can learn these same life lessons, yet from modern day examples of Uncle Cleve. Here's one of them. Brian Scudamore. Anybody recognize him? Yeah. 1-800-GOT-JUNK. He started with $1,000. One of the most profound things he said in this course in our interview, he said, I had to figure out how to pay for college. And I was driving through McDonald's, I saw a beat-up old truck with Mark's Hauling spray paint on the side. He said, I'm going to haul trash. That's how I'll pay for college. But what he said that was so important was, within a week's time, I had a truck. I paid $700 for the truck, and I had $300 left to buy flyers and gas. And I went out and started knocking on people's doors. At the time we interviewed him, he was at $106 million in revenue. Dawn Haffaker. If any of you have seen the Wounded Warrior Project with James Gandolfini on HBO, you'll recognize Dawn. Dawn Haffaker is a West Point graduate who woke up in Walter Reed Army Hospital in 2004 after being hit by an RPG in Baghdad in the summer of 2004. She woke up in a hospital bed. Her father was there. She had explained to her that she was missing her right arm. And she said, I thought my life was over. And she went on to tell us, she said, I was depressed. My military career was over. I thought I had to live with my parents. But she said, my mindset changed. The first day they wheeled me into rehab, I was still in a wheelchair. They wheeled me into rehab, and my mindset changed when I saw this guy with no legs take his first steps. She said, my God, I'm just missing an arm. She's got 165 employees today. She's based right here in D.C. with a consulting firm, with a national consulting firm. Last one I'm going to highlight here, Ryan Blair. This kid was locked up at 17, single mom, L.A. ghetto, gang banging, problem kid. He found an entrepreneur. Ryan found his own Uncle Cleve. He found an entrepreneur as a mentor. 17, he was locked up. His first exit was $25 million when he was 25 years old. That's the Ice House story. I'd be happy to take questions offline. Thank you for the opportunity to present these ideas. I hope there's something I said that can help you influence the programs in your community. Thank you.